Hello and welcome. This is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone 1M4 Don't Burn My Letter. Music by John Williams, orchestrated by Larry Wrench. And a lot of this is to do with tonics to dominants or dominants to tonics, augmented sixth chords to tonics, and basically tritone subs to tonics as well. And the whole cue is basically a sort of playful exploration of that thing. We can see it, first of all, in all of these sort of oscillations between E flat minor and D minor. So we've got an oscillation of a minor second going down, a semitone, basically. All minor chords. So that happens. We've got E minor to F minor, or F minor to E minor. We've got some other ones that appear a little bit later on, but then C to D flat. Then it goes into D minor for the whole sort of thing. Then back to some more oscillations, this time B flat minor to A minor. F sharp minor to F minor. You'll see the pattern here. Then we're in G minor for ages. And then right at the very end, we got G minor to F sharp minor. So a sort of reversal of what's going on. Then all these sort of block chordal things. And then right at the very, very end, this sort of funny bar here where we've basically got sort of two disguised French augmented sixths chords. Which I'll go on to later. And I've tried to sort of give, other sorts of interpretation of what's going on. But yeah, it's forensically detailed, this one. So the other thing I've done is I've done a sort of a quick expose of the relationships between the dominant chord to D minor, and I'm putting everything there because it's just easier to kind of deal with, and then see how those notes are simply manipulated in various sort of jazz or sort of contemporary classical ways. Both seem quite apt. So the first thing, and I'll come on to that in a minute, the first thing is that we've got an E flat chord to D minor, but the bass is doing an A, so it's like a sort of slash chord. But in a sense, E flat to D is sort of like a tritone sub, it's just that it's a minor chord to D minor rather than a major chord to D minor. It's not a Neapolitan. And you could also argue that it's an E flat minor with a sharp 4, like that, which often happens. It's a sort of particular chord that he has. So it's a sort of flat 2 chord, but over 5. So it's almost like a sort of tritone sub, but over the actual dominant tonic of A, even though the E flat's a tritone away from it. But that can be sort of built on lots of different sorts of things. So we'll see how that kind of works. So for example, if it was just A, so you would have your C sharp, your E natural, your G natural, and then the B flat would just be, sort of, a flat 9, like that. That's how we get our diminished 7th, functionally. So it's still a dominant type relationship. What then happens is if it was a tritone sub, it would be a major chord. So what happens is the 3rd of A7 becomes the 7th of E flat 7, and the 7th of A7 becomes the 3rd of E flat 7. So in other words, there's a reversal of whatever the 3rd and the 7th are, which is the very basis of sort of jazz. So we can see how that E flat has a relationship with D minor because it's derived from A. That A would just go up a semitone like that. And the E just sort of falls to E flat. So there's a relationship there. Like that. Sorry, I was playing the minor version. I should have been playing the major version. Now, if we respell the D flat as a C sharp, we then get a type of augmented sixth chord, which I haven't shown. That was a German sixth. But if the B flat is then lowered to an A, so it's like a sort of flat 5 or a sharp 4, it's called sharp 4 because it's French, then that also has a relationship, a dominant relationship with the D minor. It's just a variation or a coloration, I suppose you would call it, where that note has simply been changed to that note, but everything else is kept the same pitch-wise, just respelled so that it's a French sixth. And in fact, I will put the words French sixth there. That's the common analytical symbol in classical terms for that. And then we can see how that also relates to this as well, because this is also sort of amalgamation of both. So we got the A and the C sharp. So the C sharp is not present. We've also got the E flat. Okay, but then we're also taking the G but flattening it. So that's not the same, but we've also retained the B flat. So we got this weird chord. Like that. And of course it doesn't have to be a C sharp, it could be a C natural. But the point is that it's a play on all of those notes. They all have the same function. They're all basically dominant type chords to a tonic, or relative dominant to a relative tonic. But some of them being sharpened, some of them being flattened. Very sort of simple, really. But the whole point of this cue is that it's an exercise in sort of disguising all of these things and having a sort of mucking around with them playfully, compositionally. So we have that real dominant and the sort of tritone sub, but the minor tritone sub. So it's not a real dominant, it's a minor dominant into D minor. So we think, and then another one, which is actually, in a sense, just a chromatic neighbouring approach chord, because we've gone from D, E flat, and then back to D, but we retain the D here. So even that is a slight variation of this, because originally it was the dominant over the E flat, now it's the tonic below the E flat. The D sharp is just spelt differently, but if we have a look at that harp symbol, so that's actually a French sixth, because if we look back at our little cheat sheet, where's it gone? I'm on the wrong page. There we go. That can just be removed down like that. And now we've got our A7 with a flat 5 going to D minor. It's just a respelling, a reordering of intervals, but it's exactly the same thing. So we've got that, except it doesn't go to D. It goes to somewhere else. To there. So it's been a tonal shift. So what you expect to be D minor is actually gone up to E minor. In other words, a tonal shift from D to E. And when I say tonal, I mean literally a tone. In other words, 2 semitones. But even then it's changed, because we're starting off with another chromatic neighbouring approach chord, or auxiliary chord, which is just F minor to E. And another one on the beat. Notice how he often delays the roots where things are a little bit spicy, so he's done a second inversion chord there. That's why it's F minor with a C. And then he repeats the same thing. So now we're into our sort of tertial shift. So it's not really a chromatic mediant, it's an actual mediant. Because of Hungarian minor. But I suppose you could argue that it is a chromatic mediant shift as well. So E minor to G minor, and then we get this sort of G dim 7, and then dim 7, and now we're into A flat minor, so a semitonal shift. And now we're in horns and bassoons time rather than strings. Like that, so now we're in A flat minor to D minor. Like that. And that appears. And then here, that's an F7 flat 5. So another type of French 6, essentially. This case, though, that behaves almost like a real dominant 7th but with flat 5. But do you see how that shift of the C to the B natural is basically another French sixth? So a very similar chord to what we had here is what we have here. Like that, just a reordering of intervals, but basically the same thing. And essentially F is the dominant of C. So that works nicely. It's just that it's an irregular an irregular resolution, because you're expecting it to go outwards. But it doesn't do that. And it actually goes to C minor. So it's a really weird sort of like plagal shift to it. Like that, because you're expecting to B flat, but it doesn't do that. Again, it's a playful shift to now C minor. So sort of going on those sort of expectations. So we've got C minor now. But with the C pedal going on. But it's still that oscillation. Again, that sort of neighbouring or approach or auxiliary chord, chromatic approach note. Like that as well. Happens again. And now instead of going to D flat minor, so another sort of playful sort of tritone sub, basically. That's all it is, because all of those is what it wants to do. So it's all sort of like, you know, basically going against our expectations. But here we have a regular French sixth resolution because it goes to D. Except it doesn't. You know, a regular one would go to A flat, but like it goes to D. So it's an irregular one, but it's just used in place of a dominant seventh. It's just that that fifth has just been coloured by being flattened to a flat 5. So that's, again, going back to our little cheat sheet here. That thing here. Like that. But again, don't forget that that could have been rewritten as that. So you can see how A is the dominant of D. Like that. So again, it's that sort of little shift and playfulness that John Williams is using. Which is why it sounds so rich. So all of those French sixth chords, those are those really rich chords that sometimes go to where we want them to go to, and sometimes don't go to where we want them to go to. That one doesn't. That goes to E minor. This one doesn't. That goes to C minor. So from F, because of course C minor's dominant is actually G. So it's going backwards, sort of thing, rather than, you know, circular fifths. It's like circular fourths. So anyway, this time it does go to where we expect it. But even then, there's this little playful bit here. So we got our A chord. Let's just call it A7 with a flat 5. But then we've got this going on as well. So if I just sort of put all of those notes like that, we've got this sort of really weird add sharp 13 type sort of thing going on, which gives it a sort of interesting flavour. If I just play it at the piano, it's quite fun. Again, it's just a hyper extension, basically. Now it goes into our little D minor introduction to go into Hedwig's theme. And we're just using D harmonic minor, chromatic neighbouring notes, that one, when it changes into a different sort of scale. Like that, just chromatic neighbouring note. And then D harmonic minor. And then we're into G minor. So it almost, it has that plagalness, which is interesting, even though it starts on a dominant note of D minor. And of course, both of those notes are part of a dominant seventh, A7. If you think about the seventh of A is a G. So we got that, but it's played out as a sort of plagal, subdominant. But over the tonic, and then to D minor. So again, he's having sort of little games of what's dominant, what's subdominant, what's tonic. Well, we know what the tonic is eventually. So he keeps delaying, and now he lets it sort of go. And obviously that will go with the picture as well. Interestingly enough, actually most of that is all cut from the film, sadly. But this was the original, which I'm doing from the orchestrated score, not the live to picture version, although I'm getting the BPMs from that. So in terms of the Hedwig theme, this time it's done as it normally is, just with a tonic pedal. Now sometimes that note changes to a C sharp, like that. So here, G Iolian, D G Dorian, but basically it's all the same thing. And then we got this sort of amazing sort of E major 7 with a sharp 5, or an A flat with a flat 6 going on, which I think is just bonkers. But essentially it all comes from this little baby here, that 0811. And again, it's playing outside the scale, so it's just a jazz term. And that's quite rare, actually, to have a quintuplet right at the end, because there's quite a lot of gapping in some of the previous sort of iterations of this theme. So at that point, he doesn't gap, he just goes straight down the scale. But again, he uses that little chromatic neighbouring note. So interesting here. So we got that sort of A flat chord, but with a flat 6. And it's sort of, again, it's a type of sort of tritone sub, but it's going back to D, like that. Like that. So again, it's similar as elsewhere, but it's just those little sort of jazz influences are quite common in the whole thing. A Phrygian, and then we're back into something else. Suddenly it's B flat minor. So we got that sort of tertial shift, that sort of, Imperial March shift. And here we have more block chordal harmonizations. Like that. Again, sort of almost like a disguised French 6 because of that flat 5 or sharp 4. French is sharp 6, sharp 4, 3. This one flat 5, same as sharp 4. But again, it's sort of quite similar. Don't forget that is that, really. Like that. A sort of really interesting, almost Brucknerian sort of modulation. Just a little pedal C sharp, because that's the dominant of F sharp. So another dominant, a real dominant to tonic thing going on at that point. But then more minor second oscillations. We've got like that to F minor, F sharp minor to F minor. And note also that JW often goes from a root to a second inversion chord. This being the root, that being a second inversion chord. Because C is the fifth of F minor, fifth is in the bass, it's a second inversion. And he does the same thing, that sort of reappears all the way through the strings, and then we have a chromatic mediant shift going from there to A minor to F sharp minor, and then a semitonal modulation from F sharp like that. So going the reversal of that flat 2 to 1, we're now sharp 7 to 1. So an inversion of what we had before. So again, another playful sort of play on that tritone sub, but it's kind of done from the opposite way this time. Instead of going flat 2 to 1, we're sharp 7 to 1 instead. So absolutely fascinating, this, isn't it? Because here, it's just this sort of simple sort of modal sort of modulation, semitonal modulation. I suppose modal would be that. So now, no, that E flat and C sharp, where have we seen that before? E flat and C sharp. Well, sort of around all of these sort of places. Ah, okay. So again, he's having a sort of, that's where it comes from, obviously. You know, that instability in the theme is then exploited. And, you know, we can clearly see it. E flat 7 sharp, E flat 7 for the flat 5 or sharp 4, or A7 with a sharp 4, or with a flat 5. The same sort of thing, really. But it functions as a French 6, but again, it's an irregular resolution. It just simply is a coloured chord, or a coloration chord, note of coloration, and goes to G minor. Sorry, B flat minor to A flat minor, and then another slightly different sort of way of presenting things. In this point, a different chord. At that point, each time it appears, this theme, he changes this chord, which is interesting. And here, he's got a French 6, but also a German 6 at the same time, because of the B flat. So we got this extraordinary chord. And then it does actually go to G minor again, with a flat 6. So he's still got that sort of Hungarian G minor. Notice second inversion, root, second inversion. So interesting here, we got a sort of interesting chord at that point in the strings, which sort of appear above this. So we've got F sharp minor here, but at the top of this, we've got a B flat major 7 with a sharp 5 as well. Because if we think about it, B like that as well. So B flat major, well, with a sharp 5, so B flat augmented essentially, but with a 7th. But above, F sharp minor. So we've got this amazing thing. And interesting enough, that whole chord is a subset of a hexatonic chord as well, which is semitone, 3 semitones, semitone, 3 semitones. So in other words, if you want to make any hexatonic chord, let's just go to here. Let's just pick a thing. I don't know why I got bar numbers there. And then count up 3 semitones. There we go, done. Like that, and you can get all sorts of interesting sort of combinations of that. There we go, hexatonicness. Let's get rid of that. After that, another oscillation, then again to second inversion, and here we've got an actual, I think a what do you call it? A minor 7th, half diminished. That's what the word I was looking for. Completely lost the plot at that point. And then it sort of appears. But notice here we are in from a second inversion at that point to a root position. So it's a bit of a reversal of what's going on. So climbing up, and then we've got this sort of extraordinary sort of F minor sixth chord going to D, which is a sort of, you know, wonderful sort of chromatic mediant approach. So from C like that. But essentially you could just call it a massive appoggiatura just going on to D because of the D here, and everything else is a chromatic approach chord. Where have we seen that before? Well, all the way here. Because really, it's the same thing. It's just here is a reversal of what's going on. Like that. I suppose you would really put it as a sort of D with a major seventh, but in fact it's sort of a reversal of what's going on before, and then you know, this is sort of Nimbus 2000 sort of hybrid. Emphasis on the E flat and the C sharp. Where have we seen that before? All the way back here and elsewhere. More chromatic mediants. So here we've gone to an A7. I don't know why I didn't write that down. There we go. I haven't put the inversions in that particular one. And then we're into this amazing little bit of French sixths going on. So this chord here, like that, which goes into a third inversion, D7 chord. But let's analyse it, because it's only got 3 parts. So here, very clever 3-part writing. The B flat 5 sounds like a French 6 without the third. And the following chord sounds like a third inversion 7th, which again could be similar as well. So if we filled those notes in with the 4th note, so here we've just extrapolated these notes to here. But I could just add that G double sharp, or A natural, I suppose, but if you think about G double sharp, that would be an augmented 6 of B. And then I could also have our A flat and F sharp, that would also be an augmented 6. And that would be, as well, another French 6. It's just without that A flat, it just sounds like a third inversion dominant. But you can see how it's disguised as French augmented 6 chords, which is interesting. So, and just to reiterate, French augmented 6 is a root note with an augmented 6, a sharp 4 above that root note, and a sharp 3 above that root note. And that's how they're formed. Of course, here they're inverted slightly differently, so you'd have to invert them back again. But that's it, almost that little cheeky sort of jazz thing going on. It's almost like a sort of Tom and Jerry thing in some ways. But again, he's just reminding us that actually I'm having a playful turn here at this point. And he even reiterates it here again, like that, where we have that you know, this sort of another sort of dim 7 augmented 6, that sort of thing going on. Yeah, it's a really fascinating cue. In fact, actually, that is a dim 7th, not nothing to do with an augmented 6 at that point, like that. But it's still sort of Hungarian minor, hence the B flat and C sharp. So just reminding us that that's what we've ended up in. So the whole thing's gone from a D-based thing, or E flat minor, to D, into G Hungarian minor at that point as well. What an amazing cue. Absolutely wonderful. And it's so rich. There's so much in it. And all of those sort of things that you've been hearing, all of those really rich chords, are essentially sort of little tritone subs, but basically dominant functioning chords. Doesn't matter what they are, but generally French 6 type chords. So with our sort of flat 5 or sharp 4, going to sort of tonic or not going to a tonic. So he's subverting expectations with all of these sorts of things. So I think I put a little bit of stuff in page 2 here where I had irregular. Let's just make it a bit bigger. Treble clef here. So that's the irregular one, and this is the regular one. So I'll do the regular one first. Let's just put that there. So regular, first and fourth voices move outwards by a minor second. That D sharp goes to an E, that F goes to an E as well. That could be major or minor, it doesn't matter. But that's a regular resolution. An irregular resolution is here the first voice enharmonically shifts. So in a D sharp, it doesn't go up to an E, it goes up to an E flat. Second voice moves by semitone to a C, and all of these two just move by major seconds. Like that. But you can see that's where the irregularity of this chord. I can't play that. So it's the same notes here. I've just spelled them slightly differently. That was a D sharp in the thing here, but it's actually an E flat here. F, A, B, F, A, B. It's really, really very irregular indeed. But it doesn't sound irregular when it's in the context of this. So even on the piano, yeah, because it sounds just like, you know, fine, a plagal sort of thing going to somewhere else. Absolutely amazing. Because it seems part of that sequence, although it should be bom bom bom. It should be there because of the it's the subversion of the fact we think it should be a B flat in the next bit of the sequence, because it's gone A flat A, B flat B, C, but it's skipped two of those progressions out. It's gone straight to C, which you can do. Any chord can follow any other chord. It's just that you've got to be clever at doing it. And here he's using, you know, tonic or roots, and more roots, and it seems to work. Unbelievable. Part of the reason why it works is, interestingly, that he doesn't put any chord at the beginning of that C. So there's a split second for the ear to sort of think, oh, okay, well, that's fine. It's just a C, because we've heard F. Like that. That's fine. The ear can sort of believe that exists, because we've only heard the C on its own. It's a little sort of thing that my old composition teacher, Joe Horowitz, used to say, is that the ear needs time to accept the modulation. That's why some things are harsh or sound clumsy, and some things don't sound clumsy, is the way that you introduce the next chord or the next key. If you do it sort of momentarily or gradually, it's kind of okay, because although we've got a little sort of spike of C minor here, it doesn't seem, because it's been set up here so that it's more little spiky woodwind things going on, doesn't feel out of place. Because it's actually quite sparse, because of this has all gone in here. We've had, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 voice chords. Suddenly we've got 2 voiced chords. In other words, 2 voices and nothing else. And we've just got a melody. And then he fills it in. And notice how the A now acts as a proper dominant. It doesn't matter what you do. You could do literally anything over the top of that. Because if you got... But we're still hearing the A to D minor. I just made up some notes. I don't know what they were. No idea. It doesn't matter. Because it's all bass heavy. In other words, the harmony is derived from that bass. So that is what we have for you folks this time. Notice I don't think I did any pitch class sets at all in the entire thing. I think I might have done one there, but that's just because of my joy of pitch class sets. And I think I did a a little 0134 there. I didn't even point that out in the commentary, but it does exist. And then, of course, in the actual theme, we've got that sort of 3-3 type thing going on as well. But basically, the whole thing was about disguising French augmented sixth chords, tritone subs, dominants, going to their either normal resolutions or irregularly resolving. And that's how he did it. Bye for now. See you next time.